Heather in the Wind, a short story for young adult readers set in the universe of Maidens of Zombie Kingdom. Maidens of Zombie Kingdom is a young adult fantasy trilogy. It has some light horror in it, a little heavier than Lake Scatterwood, because it is for older readers. But it's set within a sword and sorcery sort of fantasy world where zombies come out. These short stories kind of take place either before the events of the trilogy, or they take place in the time period after. This one's after. It follows one of the characters as she's kind of lost in the woods, being chased by some sort of dark magic. This should be in its final draft form, so it should be a pure reading. Hopefully I won't find any typos. If I do, I might not be able to fight the temptation to correct them, but my sincere hope is that this will just be a pure reading, and this will be our last block for today. So again, this is Heather in the Wind, set in the universe of Maidens of Zombie Kingdom. She thought things would be better in the light, but the first hints of dawn brought no relief from the dark magic that chased her through the long night. There was no village ahead. The maps had lied to her, or the plague of ghouls that had shattered the kingdom and much of the larger world had taken this place as well. There was no sign of a larger village, though, unless it had been generations ago. Trees had grown back thick and old along the roadway. Foundations, wells, and fences were utterly lost, had they ever been there before. Only one shelter remained nestled deep in the encroaching trees. It was too large for a single-family shack and too small for a village gathering house. Maybe a store, but probably not. Maybe a shrine, but if it was, the god went unworshipped now. The roof sagged. The logs of the walls gaped. The place was dark and empty. Even the spiders had vacated their ancient webs long ago. Heather accepted the place as shelter, though. Collapsing to her side on the sour dirt floor, she had no other plan beyond that fall. Darkness would come again, and this would be no protection from whatever evil had her sent. A weathered and splitting table had been pushed into one dark corner. Broken crockery decorated the edges of the walls. Someone had carved runes along the decaying walls in a language unknown to her, and this bothered her a great deal. Voices carried on the wind. Heather had no energy left to fight, but she still crawled up to her knees and drew her sword to greet whoever it might be. Children's laughter drifted through the remains of the door that would no longer close tight. The sound of young laughter should have been comforting in the mortal world. Armies and bandits did not travel with children. If they ever did, they certainly were never laughing. But Heather had seen all sorts of unnatural business since becoming a knight. The dark spirits were deceptive, manipulative, and full of guile. So she trusted that high, shrill laughter not one bit. The building shifted and rattled. It could have been the wind. Were any blowing. Those suspicious runes pulsed and lit up with a dull light. She braced herself for the place to collapse in on top of her before she could gain her feet and exit. She was surprised to see the room swelling outward from the inside instead of falling. The cobwebs faded as the corners of the room sharpened back into clean lines. The roof lost its sag, and a few support beams grew into the missing slots. The table walked out toward her. Heather stood and held her sword at the ready to slay the table monster if she could. The furniture seemed to take the warning and bypassed her to get back into place. The broken crockery was gone, but from a now swept and fresh floor. In its place, cooking smells that tempted her empty stomach wafted through the new space. She trusted those smells less than the children's laughter. Sampling magic stew was a good way to be poisoned by a witch based on the stories Heather knew from childhood. Transparent figures moved about in the shifting light of the place, and they exited through the repaired door, leaving Heather alone with the cooking. She staggered toward the door and forced it open with her forearm. She had no intention of being trapped in this magic place as it transported her somewhere else. As she emerged from the strange cabin, she found the village the maps had promised. The trees had retreated, green grasses replaced the thick bed of leaves that marked seasons upon seasons of old-growth forest. There were all those laughing children running around in between the adults, preparing an outdoor meal among the decorations for some sort of lively festival. Heather spied a road that corresponded roughly to the one she had followed in here, as it wove between fields of crops, but she did not as it now wove between fields of crops, but she did not trust that it would see her back out into any world she recognized. "Who are you?" she demanded, "and how am I here?" A few people glanced at her, but returned to their tasks as if her presence and her outburst were nothing all that special. One large man wearing an apron took his time wiping off his hands before he approached. He tapped a woman on the shoulder, and she put down a tray to follow him up the path toward the newly restored cabin and Heather. She saw movement to her side and spun as she retreated a few steps along the front of the structure, away from the open door. The men glanced at the point of her sword, but then entered the building as if they had better things to do than deal with her. The couple from the festival set up arrived, but stayed outside the range of her blade. He said, "Allow me to introduce myself. I don't care what your names are. How did you bring me here?" The man and woman exchanged a look that seemed heavy with meaning, and the woman spoke next. "I'm sorry you were frightened. This is necessary for our safety. I demand to be returned to my world." "This isn't another world," the man said. "Not exactly. More like a pocket within the world we all share." "Then I want out of your pocket," she said. "We will show you the way," the woman said, "but you should know there are dark forces just outside this safe place. We can sense them. They are close. This time of year is always dangerous, but the dark spirits are more active than usual. We cannot risk discovery. You would do well to not risk keeping me around." "Are the dead monsters still out there?" a boy asked. The man turned and waved a hand as if shooing away bugs or some house pet. "Not now. Go play, son." "Do you speak of the ghouls?" Heather asked. The couple, the intruding boy, and even one man from the cabin stuck his head out to hear this. The man in the apron, who had not been allowed to introduce himself, said, "You were out there with the dead who no longer slept?" "That threat is over in my world," Heather said. The woman let out a sigh. The boy raised his hands and cheered. It was the man who held up his halting hands. "Everyone calm down. How do you know for sure that threat is over?" She sized up the man. She didn't trust his reaction to the other's celebration. "I'm a knight in the Order of the Royal Daughters. I served the one true king of Valahark and his aunt, Princess Darn, the leader of my order. I was part of the army that defeated the evil magic behind the ghouls. They are gone, but something else I could not see chased me here through the woods all night. Now I'm lost in this place and need to go back to return to my people." The boy asked, "The lost king returned? Then all is saved." "Quiet, boy," the man demanded. The lost king had returned, but he was no one's savior. The truth behind that legend was far darker than the people of Valahark had imagined. Heather wasn't sure how to answer that. Silence followed. The only answer for the moment was the low of a cow somewhere behind the cabin. The woman finally broke it. "The haunts of the woods are always there. They preceded the monsters from the grave you call the ghouls. But this is a festival to renew the wards around our village and protect us from them. We sometimes use seers to view the world outside the pocket. We saw the ones you call ghouls. We saw many fall to them. The world is full of many dangers, and that's why we must protect ourselves." "The world is dangerous indeed," Heather said, "and that's why I must return to protect everyone outside of here." More people seemed to be gathering, and Heather was starting to feel trapped. The woman said, "You should eat and rest. Even if you plan to return to the realm of the haunts, you'll be no match for them in your current condition." The man said, "You're no match for them anyway, and they will have you if you leave." "There is no if about this," Heather said. "I am leaving no matter what I have to do to make you release me." The man showed his teeth. "Do not threaten us. I'll do anything to protect my village." Let me get a drink of water real quick. Excuse me. The woman placed a hand on his shoulder, but spoke to Heather. "Time moves differently here, and it will be dark soon over there. It will be dark over there soon. You should wait." "If you keep me here," Heather said, "you'll regret it. I'll become the threat you're trying to hide from." "We do not take well to threats, girl knight," he said, shaking off the woman's hand that had failed to calm him. "I think hiding has made you soft. I think you avoid conflict, and you are not prepared to face me even at my worst." The growing crowd exchanged looks that were easier to read as common fear. A number of them backed away. "We cannot expose ourselves to threats," the man said. "It is not our fault you stumbled into our pocket. You were seeking safety. Your soul cried out to us. We did not bring you here. Your own desire for safety opened the way. You're the one who is trying to hide." Heather lowered her sword by a few inches, but did not put it away. "Can you send me back? I will tell no one of you." "You probably won't survive another night over there to tell anyone," he said, "but we have no fear of your story because you will not remember us once you are gone." The woman held up her hands. "Please, just stay. Renew your energy, and you can move again in the light. You can face the dangers at full strength if you insist on facing them at all." "I don't want to be here. I don't trust any of you. Release me, I insist." The man lifted his fist, and Heather responded by pointing her sword at him. He sneered and said, "You are the greatest danger to yourself. We're just trying to live." He snapped his fingers, and then all of it was gone from her mind. Heather gasped and scrambled to her feet from where she leaned and apparently... Need to fix that. And apparently slept outside the ruined cabin in the blanket of long-dead leaves. She remembered the place changing shape, the voices and the runes. She did not recall how she got back out here, though. She turned in a full circle. Something told her she wasn't alone, but there was no one in sight. No one she could see, anyway. Heather realized her sword was out and still in her hands. A child's laugh carried faintly on the wind, and Heather cursed under her breath. The sun was already setting. How was that possible? She didn't feel the least bit rested. Howls and unnatural rumblings rose from the direction of the dark forest and replaced the hint of laughter before the light was even gone. Heather made her way to the road again. She afforded one glance down the deserted path from which she had come the night before, another to the cursed cabin that marked where an entire village had somehow vanished from the kingdom, and then turned away to flee once more. Before she took to heel, she felt something in her pockets. Fresh food, berries, bread that was still warm, vegetables and meat with steam rising off of them wrapped in leaves. And stuffed into her pockets with all this mysterious food were the petals of multicolored flowers. This was not the season for blooming, but the presence of magic food bothered her more than the leavings of flowers. It all smelled good, it was tempting, and her stomach growled out its emptiness. Still, she cast all that food and the petals onto the path behind her. She was nobody's fool. Heather got her weary feet moving as another night approached.